Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Rule 34 podcast. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow guest,
Mr. Solis.
All right, sir. It's been quite a while since the last pay-per-view. How have you been?
The last pay-per-view was WrestleMania Backlash.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. I'm doing fine. Summer started. The kids are dismissed. Teachers are dismissed. And I've got a vacation coming up in 1 week. Like a bona fide disconnect, see what I can do kind of vacation.
Nice. Yeah, as you mentioned, school finishing up. As I mentioned to you earlier, I also finished school last week, and so my break has officially started. Thank you, sir. First year in the bag, as Dominic and I discussed on Friday. First year done. We were very relieved.
Awesome.
Yeah. It was honestly very surprising to both of us just how far we made it because of the fact that it's one whole year done already.
Yeah, like a quarter of your projected time spent in college, in the books. A little hard to believe because it was done entirely within the confines of your living arrangements, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really excited, and so in a unique circumstance, you're both able to sort of, experience being a freshman all over again in your sophomore year.
Yeah. And, as you mentioned, the entirety of this year of school was done in our house.
Yes.
Well, very similarly, back again after being introduced last year, NXT holds their pay-per-view NXT Takeover, which is in your house.
What an incredible transition, sir.
So first off, this is the Takeover following Stand and Deliver, where a lot of change happened.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Before getting to, I want to know your opinion. Did you feel that this Takeover had that Takeover feel or build to it?
It absolutely did not. I think when it became apparent, because I've fallen off on NXT TV. The semester gets busy. I commit to watching it later, and you know what happens is I see screenshots on Instagram, or my weekly podcast ruins match results for me, so I don't even go back and catch up. It's like, okay, Kushida defended successfully his title again. So I've been really lost, and I only happened upon another Instagram post that said, in your house this weekend. I was like, this weekend? What? So, yeah, completely caught me off guard, and I just didn't feel at all a lot of the hype around the show. How about you, Jack?
Very similar. I didn't even know that it was this Sunday because of the fact that, I don't know, it kind of seemed like they were still in the progression of building a lot of these matches.
Yeah, for sure. Have we truly moved on from NXT Stand and Deliver?
Yeah, I felt like maybe this, but see, the issue is, maybe they're obviously planning to do a takeover the same week as SummerSlam, so it's kind of hard for them if they wanted to push this one further back. But
yeah. So it, I also take for granted that it's June. You know what I mean? I go, didn't we just have? Oh, we had one in April. Yeah, I guess it's time.
Yeah, and it's kind of been tough because it's like, I don't know, obviously it was pretty good, but I felt like the builds could have been better.
With one exception. I think all of the builds were lacking except for one, and I bet you know which one.
I have a feeling as well, but we'll begin with our first match, which was a winner take all, with Legado del Fantasma facing off against tag champs MSK and North American champ Bronson Reed. The champs putting all their titles on the line in this 3-on-3 tag match.
against Legado del Fantasma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, just like we were just saying, Bronson Reed won that thing, I think, 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Like exactly. So, I mean, I didn't even know he was running with the Legado del Fantasma. I saw an interview in the pre-show where, what's his name? The leader. Help me out.
Santos Escobar?
Santos Escobar. He says, he stuck his nose in our business, so he made a cameo in a match. And I was like, when did that happen?
Yeah, I that commentary had mentioned something about Reed getting involved in some tag match, and like I tried recalling, I was like, man, I guess this is showing like how rapid build they did a lot of these matches, because I can't recall that happening.
But an interesting stipulation. I'm very appreciative of commentary letting us know that in a previous In Your House there have been winner-take-all matches like this before, featuring Shawn Michaels and Diesel.
What did you think of the match?
Oh, I really was into the match. I really was into. I think there was lots of spots that like got me hyped. You know what I mean? I go, oh man, this is great.
Yeah, I found it very fast-paced, and when I was trying to think ahead, like I was trying to figure out what would open the show, and as we watched this match, my dad and I was like, yeah, this was the perfect way to open it up, because as I forgot to mention, they had about 300 people there for the event, and so this was a great way to get that crowd riled up.
They said it a couple of times. This is the largest crowd in the CWC like ever in its history. And you're like, yeah, that's a funny statement to make. It's true. It's funny that you'd make it as many times as you have.
Yeah. Any spots that stood out to you? I had two that stood out to me.
Yeah, one that definitely should have ended the match. MSK have somebody by the hands and feet suspended over the ring, right? Like they're going to play jump rope with his body. And Bronson Reed does a senton on top of him. Oof. And I think, how is he going to keep going? What was one of yours?
When Escobar pulled out the Michinoku driver onto Bronson Reed, I was very surprised that he picked him up.
With such ease. Goodness gracious. It was so surprising. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but it was so surprising, I almost began to question whether it was the right thing to do, I'm like, oh, that hit me so good. I wanted to say, but wait a minute, why didn't we build up for 15 minutes on him trying? A la Hogan and Andre, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Goodness gracious, that was a good spot. And I thought Legado had a chance. I thought, they're really strong. Like they're building up like how long they've been together as a team. If you wanted to put and I thought, gosh, and Santos just lost his belt a couple of weeks ago. If you wanted to build that guy, is he getting a new belt today? I thought that all the way up to the bell ringing, and I go, oh, or not.
And it's funny that you mentioned Hogan, because that was my other spot that I had written down, was when Escobar grabs that North American title from the Timeskeeper area, and he's looking down the camera, and he's getting all angry, and then he screams at it, and then as soon as he turns around, Reed just bulldozes him through the fencing and barricade area.
What does that have to do with Hogan?
Yeah, that's because it seemed like he was trying to Hulk up,
Oh, of course. Yeah, and then got completely sideblinded by Bronson Reed.
Yeah, and it was funny because before the match, when my dad and I were discussing like predictions and stuff for it, I had called that I didn't think Escobar was going to take the pin, but I thought Reed was going to be the one pinning one of the other members of Legado del Fantasma.
Yes, and another great part of the match was Santos' absolute refusal to be in the same ring with Bronson Reed. Tagging his partners in whenever the opportunity came up. You know, it's nice to see heels do heelish things. Oh, and those poor guys. There was a great moment where Raul Mendoza's trying to, like, clothesline Bronson Reed, just keeps bouncing off him. And, like, he has this look. He looks at his corner. You assume to Santos Escobar with this look that begs without any words. What am I supposed to do?
And then very similarly, there's one part where it seems they're about to face off, and Escobar tags in Wild, I believe, and he just looks at him and goes, "Why do you want me to go in there if you're scared to fight him?"
Right.
Yeah, really great match, and kind of a match that sets the theme where a lot of the matches that didn't have much build to it will at least like be carried essentially by the match. Like the lack of story building towards that match at least gets carried by the fact that the match was pretty good.
And I think anybody who does their homework thinks, oh, Bronson Reed and MSK are not losing the titles that they each have won within a month of now, right?
Yeah.
But I was convinced. There were a couple of opportunities or times when I thought it could end right here. Legado del Fantasma can really cement their legado. I was hooked, line and sinkered.
Yeah. MSK and Bronson, though, retained their titles. Very good match. And then right before we get into the next match, they show a little preview of what happened like earlier before the show starting. And they show they're trying to interview Kyle O'Reilly in the parking lot, but then he catches the Wade getting out of their cars, and they start chirping at each other and getting into it. I have this written down solely because they just continue to prove that if there's ever a parking lot scene showed in NXT, you know something's about to go down.
It is important to bring up for sure, especially how the show ends. How's that for intrigue?
Yeah. Setting a common theme throughout the show, as we'll see with this little example. But then next we move on to one match that's, I wouldn't say the match was built, but one character that's been being built for quite some time. We have Xia Li versus Mercedes Martinez.
Yeah, Xia Li seeking vengeance for a loss to Mercedes Martinez in the Mae Young Classic 4 years ago.
Yeah, 4 years ago.
She's a different competitor, a different person.
Yeah, and they kind of built upon that by showing how there was a lot of back and forth between the two of them. Like it was very evenly matched, but as time went on, you would kind of see Xia getting a bit of an advantage, but also seeing Mercedes having advantages at some point too, kind of playing up, you know, how both have essentially grown since the past 4 years.
Yeah, agreed. It was really, I don't think I saw the first match, but you definitely got a sense that this was a significantly different match between the two people.
Yeah.
Also, like, Boa being another element that wasn't a part of the first match, but he plays a certain part here.
Mm-hmm. And one interesting element they added was there's one spot where Xia Li has Mercedes Martinez up against the outside turnbuckle, and she goes for one of her kicks. Mercedes moves out, and they play up the whole thing of Xia injuring one of her legs, playing into the fact that is she going to be able to complete the match, knowing that her style is mainly based on kicks.
And she kicks that pole pretty convincingly, pretty hard.
Yeah. Overall, and this was an interesting match because personally, me and my dad saw it as going either way. We thought either person could have won, and it could have contributed to whatever story they were trying to tell.
Mm-hmm. We could have seen Mercedes Martinez win, and then Xia Li has got to suffer the consequences of bringing shame to her faction, which has a name. I didn't realize that. Or it could have been Xia Li bringing pride and honor to her faction, which I don't know if you knew, Jack, has a name.
Honestly, I didn't even know.
They're called Tian Sha, I think. Yeah, Tian Sha is the name of the group. And I've seen that on their Tron, and I thought it was that creepy woman's name, but she has her own name, and that's Mei Yi.
Yeah, that caught me off guard when they were referring to her as that, because like you mentioned, for the longest time, I thought her name was Tiana Shaw.
Yeah. So, the match was good. I enjoyed it. But wait, there's more.
Yeah, so after the match, it seemed Bo hands Xia Li a chair, and it seems like she's going to try and, use it on Mercedes, but Mercedes fights back, uses the chair on both Boa and Xia, and that's when the camera redirects back to the very top of the stage, and that's when you see Mei Ying rise from her chair.
For the first time in months, right?
Yeah.
Like, real, and come face to face with Mercedes Martinez, who's running her down in the only way she knows how, in like that super tough talk.
Yeah.
By the way, Jack, I don't know how she could have swung that chair so lightly, but still made those things look like they hurt so much.
Yeah. But interesting post-match, and if, rumors are to be true, maybe this is the last we see of Mercedes Martinez.
I thought the same, because there is talks of her moving to the big show on Monday, but I think this continues the feud. I think she has a score to settle. Maybe down the line she's put down to pasture. But we saw seemingly an old frail mystic being grab her by the throat and throw her into the barricade. It was weird. It was crazy. It was cool.
Yeah. So,
and you want to know something that I heard on a YouTube channel? They compared this angle to the Alexa Bliss, Shayna Baszler stuff happening on Raw. Are you following that? And are you enjoying that, sir?
I've been following a little bit of it. It seemed kind of odd to me the way they're doing a lot of this stuff with Alexa and Shayna. I'll tell you this: the main thing I didn't like from it was Shayna, due to distractions, losing a match to Reginald.
Yeah, right? And so this, it's Cultaholic. I reference them a lot. Tom Campbell was talking about how you have legit fighter Shayna, losing at the behest of this mystic power, and it's really frustrating. But, on NXT, you have Mercedes Martinez, a legit fighter who's, losing to this mystic power, and it's a lot more palatable. It's a lot better, and it's a lot more interesting.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder if it has to do with the level they're going with each character. I think they're almost the same, but I think because of how much they play up the gimmick of Alexa, maybe that might be why, the Mercedes Xia Li one is more palatable, just because, they play up a lot of, how would you say, like the gimmick that Alexa has and like the special powers and stuff. Whereas like Tiana or the thing with Mei Ying, it doesn't seem that over the top, because as we saw, when she faced off with Mercedes in the post match, it wasn't a lot of that like mystic power stuff. It was more like she just grabbed her by the neck and threw her off the stage.
Yeah. I know what you mean. NXT is sort of working with subtlety, where Raw is setting off pyro.
Yeah. And speaking of intensity, before we get to the next match, we get a little, essentially, promo from Thatcher and Ciampa hyping up their upcoming Tornado tag match against the Grizzled Young Veterans this Tuesday.
Interesting to not have it on this show. I wonder, what that means. I mean, it makes me excited for NXT. One thing NXT's done for a long time is make me excited about NXT. It's like, hey, Tuesday, you don't want to miss this. And I'm like, I really don't.
Yeah. And I'm glad that, they took notice, because if you remember from, when the pandemic and all that was happening, what we would notice a lot from NXT was they wouldn't announce a lot of their matches for the next episode until maybe a day or two before, where now they've taken notice with fans kind of, saying that maybe they should start planning more ahead. And so now they're starting to hype matches a lot sooner for the next episode. Like sometimes you'll see as soon as an episode of NXT ends, they start hyping up matches for next week.
When it was an hour, when NXT was 1 hour on the network, William Regal would legit come out and say, hey, in 2 weeks, you both are going to settle this. And you're like, golly, there's no time tonight. There's no time next week because we already know what's going to happen next week. Can you imagine? He's like, hey, in a fortnight, we're going to have something special happening.
Yeah, and I'm glad they've really gone back to that because they've done that a lot. And, you know, it really shows how appreciated it is because now it's like, as you mentioned, they're giving reasons ahead of time for you to start planning ahead to tune into each episode in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
Now, next is a match that I feel like this is the one that we were hinting at with the most build. I don't know if this is the one that you were thinking of, but
this is it.
But we have LA Knight versus Cameron Grimes in a ladder match for the $1 Million Championship.
Yeah, the revived $1 Million Championship. Jack, you got to tell the folks. You got to take them to school. What on earth is the... we don't know who Cameron Grimes is. We don't know who LA Knight is. But tell us, please, what is the $1 Million Championship?
So, back in around the 80s and 90s as well, there was a wrestler known as Ted DiBiase, who his gimmick was the $1 Million Man. Rich man who you would see many times uses money to his advantage, such as paying off Andre the Giant to get the WWE Championship. But so as he, and this was the good part, was when they showed the promo package for this match, they had Ted DiBiase essentially describing, how it came to be. And I like the part where he mentions, everyone in NXT wants to go for the NXT title, the North American title, the tag title. But he even mentions he did it the same. They show him with the tag title and stuff. But he brought in his own belt as a sort of like elevator for himself. Saying that this is the belt for those who can truly go in the ring, who can truly get the fans behind them and stuff like that. Basically, while it was his own belt, and if you want to know how the design looks, the front of the belt is essentially big money dollar signs.
Yep.
And it's gold and has, in his words, a bunch of diamonds that were carefully picked out to truly match its status. And he's brought it back because over the past weeks, even months, we've been seeing vignettes of Cameron Grimes, showing off and flaunting his money that he got through investing in stocks. And then that gained the attention of Ted DiBiase, who's essentially tried to challenge Grimes to see, if he's truly worthy of the $1 Million name moniker.
Right.
And throughout this, LA Knight has gotten involved through matches with Grimes and trying to prove to DiBiase that maybe he's worthy of being aligned that way.
So Cameron Grimes since January has been doing this. I have a lot of money, right? Won it in the stock market, betting on GameStop. And he is like this hapless, funny guy who has more money than he knows what to do with, right? And he's living up to the standard. He's seeking, and he wants to be the $1 Million champion. Wants to outdo Ted DiBiase once people started making comparisons. A wrestler with a bunch of money, we've seen it before. And he goes, wait a minute, but I could be better. LA Knight, I'm really excited because coming into this feud, he didn't have a lot of going on. He was just a guy who talked real good. He's got one catchphrase, right? And I'm really excited that he's a part of this because it gives him something else. Oh, he's a guy, you know what I mean? I've heard him described as an old school man in the sense that he brags about his lustful conquests, and his physique. So the only thing he's missing is, oh yes, and I also have a lot of money. So this plays right into that, and you're like, right on, okay, look at this. I can see you with this belt.
Yeah. And so overall, what did you think of the match, sir?
It was incredible.
Yeah, there was a lot of crazy spots. I was very surprised by Grimes doing that dive off the support beam.
Uh-huh. as wrestling fans, we often catch ourselves all having the same thought at the same time, and it's triggered by the smallest, tiniest detail. But, Jack, did you think when Cameron Grimes was hanging off that support beam that he was going to do something else instead of falling?
I honestly, from the very start, when they announced the ladder match, the entire time, because you know how his move is the cave-in, the entire time I was wondering if he was gonna find a way to do that off of either like a ladder or like the barricade.
Interesting. Yes, that's not where I thought you were going. When he was hanging off that support, I thought that the support basically is like leading to the belt. If he just sort of monkey barred it, like in an TNA X Division title match.
Oh yeah, I forget what they call it. Ultimate X, I think is what it was.
Ultimate X, right?
Yeah.
But he just dives onto LA Knight on the outside.
Yeah, it looked like a pretty rough landing, but man, they really, usually with ladder matches, sometimes you'll get ones that heavily use the ladders. Others, it's like they somewhat use them, but not as effectively to the name. I thought they did a pretty good job of using the ladders and utilizing them in unique ways.
Unique ways, but we also had our tropey ways that they'll never stop doing.
Yeah.
And they really should.
Yeah, and I liked how, as I mentioned in the opening package, how DiBiase mentioned it about how it's a belt for those who can go. Throughout the match, they kept going. Like, there wasn't really that many spots where one guy was on the ground for a long time. It was like, there was so
they
many
went
moments.
non-stop.
Yeah, there were so many moments where either Grimes or Knight got thrown out the ring and they were immediately getting back in like a couple seconds later. Like, it was just that quick pace showing off that endurance.
It's funny, you brought it up twice when that opening package, Ted DiBiase says that the belt is for those guys that could go. Do you realize how many people have been the $1 million champion in WWE's history?
Yeah. It was funny because on the pre-show they kind of discussed its legacy, and it was very funny because they said it went from DiBiase to Virgil, and then I think it was the guy Sam Roberts. He mentions, he goes, other than those who have held it within the DiBiase family, the only other person to have held it was Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Right. Yeah. So for all those guys that can run, that can hang, it's 4 people, and 2 of them have the last name of DiBiase.
Yeah.
One of them was his right hand man, his attendant or his servant who had enough. Oh, and then you have Stone Cold, who definitely wasn't Stone Cold when he held the belt.
Yeah. But what'd you think about like the finish and the result of the match?
I really was going for Cameron Grimes, and that crowd was really into Cameron Grimes. It was exciting to hear that group of people sincerely cheer and boo certain people. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And they were really behind Cameron Grimes. But LA Knight winning, it just gives his character. He's the newest guy on the scene. Gives him just a ton of credibility. And Cameron Grimes is just going to come after him. So guess what? I'm hyped for the next time Cameron Grimes and LA Knight fight.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm excited to see where it goes. And I saw 2, people bring up ideas for the belt. Because, obviously people were talking about how immediately after they were like, oh, Grimes' chase for the belt is going to be so good and it's going to get the fans behind him even more. And it's going to make people loathe LA Knight more. And I saw 2 interesting theories. One that I liked a bit more than one. The first one was that someone was saying maybe NXT should use the $1 million belt as their version of the Money in the Bank, where they can use it to cash in on the main title somewhere down the line and bring it back as a yearly thing. But when I heard that, I was kind of like, I don't want to really go that way, just because it's why have DiBiase come in and introduce that belt if it's only going to be used like that? The second one I saw, which I thought was very interesting, was someone said how, in NXT there's the women's belt and then their women's tag belt and stuff. And then they mentioned how like slowly like the North American belt is somewhat getting elevated to like the level of the NXT belt.
Right.
And so they were mentioning how they could bring in this $1 million belt as like a secondary mid-card belt to the North American belt. Having two mid-card belts, especially with how many people they have down there, it could work. Because that was my main worry was, is it going to be a thing of too many belts?
You're describing a relationship similar to the European Championship to the Intercontinental, right?
Yeah. Having something like that. So I'm excited to see where they go with this, especially now with the chase for Grimes to get to that belt.
You know where they're going to go? They're going to go to 2 NXT shows because, golly gee, this show just went from having, like, it had 1 belt. Now it has 5 because it has the Cruiserweight one, too.
Yeah.
I just got a really gross feeling in the pit of my stomach saying that.
Yeah. Because it's crazy to think they have the NXT belt, the NXT women, the North American, the tag, the men's tag, the women's tag, the Cruiserweight, and now this $1 million belt. 7 championships on one brand.
They have more than Raw or SmackDown. They have about as much as Raw and SmackDown combined.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see where they go.
But I'm excited for LA Knight. I like things like this that make me care about a guy a little bit more than I started the night with.
Yeah.
The LA Knight.
Alright, so the next match, one that kind of was like you can add this match to kind of the whole thing of being built within a short amount of time, is Ember Moon versus Raquel Gonzalez for the NXT Women's title. Now, they have a lot of history with each other, dating back to the first ever Women's Dusty Tag Cup tournament. But that necessarily didn't play into the build for this match, really.
No. Willie, Ember Moon is, again, vying for vengeance on behalf of her tag team partner, Shotzi Blackheart, who we're told is injured at the hands of the NXT Women's Champion.
Yeah. Oh, real quick, I forgot to mention this as well. I believe it was before this match, I believe it was before this match. We had footage shown backstage of Cross and Dunn trying to get into it with William Regal, trying to get security to stop them and separate them, telling them to save it for the ring.
Right.
Yeah.
Good catch.
And so then we get to this match, and as you mentioned, the build being Raquel taking out Ember's partner, so that leads her to wanting to challenge her for the title. And you obviously have Dakota there. It's interesting to see how things have changed within the year, where when 2020 it was Raquel sort of being that sidekick to Dakota, and now you're seeing Dakota very much being that sidekick to Raquel now.
Yep.
Overall, what do you think of the match?
I enjoyed it, and I caught myself enjoying it more than Raquel's match with Io a couple of months ago.
Yeah, this one was pretty. It was a pretty decent match to me. It was interesting to see just how much offense Ember was getting in.
Yes.
Because usually, if you were to look at this match, hinting to last week's episode with Dom, you would usually think it would be a David versus Goliath type match, obviously, because of, bigger opponent versus smaller one. You would be thinking the bigger guys getting most of the offense in, but in this one, Ember really got a lot of the offense in.
Yeah, and even though Ember got a lot of the offense, I don't think it makes Raquel look bad. I don't know. I'm somebody who, Wade Barrett was on commentary saying, gosh, Raquel's improved so much, right? And I think that's a funny compliment to give somebody, because it recognizes how bad you were a very short while ago. So anyway, just to see her hang with Ember was good for me to see, as far as accepting her reign, right? Which we were all really contentious about 2 months ago.
Yeah. And then, I forget what the spot was, but when Raquel was down and Ember went for the pin, I immediately saw the camera angle and I immediately went, Dakota's going to come and put the leg on the rope. And as I said it, she immediately went in and put the leg on the rope.
I know exactly the spot you're talking about. And you know what always impresses me? You know what, like, without fail is going to get a pop for me is when they do a spot, a move that is so random, right, in the space and the time that it takes, but they're able to land perfectly so that Dakota can put her foot on the rope, right? Yeah. She's perfectly spaced from the rope to do that. It's so crazy and cool the way they do that.
Yeah, and not only that, they don't get it to the awkward position where you have to notice them scooting more towards
right, exactly. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And the finish of the match, we see Shotzi Blackheart make her return from the injury that Raquel caused to fend off Dakota Kai, leaving Ember to face off Raquel on her own. And that's when we see, Raquel get the upper hand. Powerbomb to Ember and to retain her title.
That powerbomb she did to Ember is the best that move has looked in a minute. I really, really liked the way she popped her up into the air, the way she slammed her down. It was really, really good.
Yeah. Overall, like I said, decent match to me. I'm still waiting a bit more for Raquel to show me a bit more. Just because she won brownie points with me. Yeah, I'm still weary. Just because it's like...
And you know what? And there were spots here, too, where Ember could have won, frankly, as far as I'm concerned. Like, they really built her up as, oh, yeah, I've been here for a minute. Wait, was Ember former NXT? Yes, she was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she really looked it, too. So, again, somebody who's done their homework might think, oh, we know exactly how these matches are going to turn out. But this was, I think, the fourth match that made me think this honestly could go either way. We can, we can run with Ember for a minute. Let's go.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know. They're in a bit of a tough spot in my view with their two top titles of the NXT and men's and women's title. Just because it's like, the more I've observed it, it's like the more I see a lot of fans aren't being too patient or how would you say, I guess kind to both the champions. Because kind of going back to my rant from the stand and deliver thing, a lot of people weren't too happy with the Raquel match because it was like Ember got in like 90% of the offense, and it wasn't until like the very end that Raquel got a lot in. And as we'll see in the next match, a lot of people also weren't too happy with the champion in the match. And like, I don't know, I saw a lot of people calling for changes in the two titles, and so it's kind of showing me, kind of like what I hinted at in that Stand and Deliver episode, that there's a part of me that feels that or I felt that they weren't going to be as accepted by the crowd due to their styles not really meshing well with what they're used to.
Good point. How much time we got left in this episode?
About 5 minutes.
So I think in the next one, we've got a main event, a big old crowded main event to talk about. And then I think you want, too, to talk about recent developments in the WWE, the wrestling world as a whole. And maybe we talk a little bit more about fans and maybe even touch on a few comments made by the game himself, Triple H. Did you hear that?
Yeah. Definitely some interesting things.
Yeah, let's say we're going to continue this conversation over there. Join us over there, please.
Yeah, so we'll end this episode off right here. Obviously going to a part 2. Got to discuss the Fatal 5-Way main event. As I mentioned to Solis, there's been a lot going on in the wrestling world, and I feel that there's a lot to discuss on to keep things like updated. So tune in to the next episode.